The heavy manila folder slammed against the solid oak table with a sound like a gunshot. My hand resting on the wood did not flinch. I stared at the legal documents spreading across the grain, then up at the man standing over me. Darius Sterling looked like a model in a magazine with his $3,000 custom suit and his teeth that were too white, to be honest. He leaned in close, and his cologne smelled expensive and suffocating. "Sign the papers," old man Darius hissed. His voice was smooth, but there was poison underneath it. "You are 65 years old, Pops. You are getting confused. You are forgetting things. It is time to let the professionals handle the assets." I looked down at the table beneath his manicured hands. "I built this table with my own tools 40 years ago. I sanded every inch of the grain until my fingers bled. I varnished it while my late wife hummed gospel tunes in the kitchen. It was strong. It was honest. It was everything Darius was not. This house was not just brick and mortar. This was the legacy of the King family. My father was a gardener who worked 3 shifts a day for 20 years to buy this land. He broke his back so that we could have a deed with our name on it in a respectable neighborhood. He planted the maple tree in the front yard. He paid for every beam with sweat and dignity. Now Darius wanted to bulldoze it all. He wanted to wipe away 70 years of history to build some glass luxury condos called Sterling Plaza. He wanted to trade my father's blood for a quick payday. I stood up slowly. My knees popped, but I kept my back straight. I looked Darius directly in his eyes. "I am not confused," I said, and my voice was low and steady like a rumble of thunder. "I know exactly what this is. You see a pile of money. I see my family history. I would rather strike a match and burn this house to ash than let a man who has never known the value of a hard-earned dollar touch it." Darius's face turned red. He opened his mouth to shout, but the sound of footsteps stopped him. I turned toward the hallway. Hope surged in my chest. Nia, my daughter, my little girl. She would stop this madness. She would tell her husband that he had crossed a line. Nia walked into the dining room. She was wearing her blue silk robe. Her face was pale. She did not look at Darius. She looked at me. I waited for her to run to my side. I waited for her to defend me. Instead, she stopped 5 feet away. Her hands were shaking violently. She was clutching a large black plastic garbage bag. "Nia, baby," I started to say. She did not let me finish. Her eyes were cold stones. She lifted the heavy bag and hurled it at my feet. It hit the floor with a wet thud. "You are a burden, Dad," she said. Her voice cracked, but the words were sharp enough to cut skin. "You are an anchor dragging us down. I cannot do this anymore. Take your trash and get out. This is my husband's house now. Don't come back." The air left my lungs. It felt like I had been punched in the gut. My own daughter. The girl I raised alone after her mother passed. The girl whose hair I braided. She had just discarded me. Darius smirked. It was the smile of a predator who had just won a meal. He grabbed my arm. I could have broken his jaw with one punch, but I was frozen in shock. He shoved me toward the front door. I stumbled onto the porch. The October wind in Chicago cut through my flannel shirt like a knife. The freezing rain hit my face. "You heard her," Darius said. He slammed the heavy wooden door shut. The lock clicked. I stood there shivering in the dark. I was 65 years old. I was wet and cold, and I had just been thrown away like garbage by the only family I had left in this world. I dragged my boots across the wet pavement toward the bus stop at the corner of Division Street. The rain soaked through my jacket and chilled my bones, but the cold in my chest was far worse. My heart felt heavier than the waterlogged clothes clinging to my skin. My own daughter. The thought played over and over in my mind like a broken record. I reached the shelter. The glass walls were cracked and covered in graffiti. I collapsed onto the cold metal bench. I looked at the black plastic bag in my hand. Trash. That is what she called it. I raised my arm to toss it into the gutter. I wanted nothing to do with anything from that house, but 40 years of hard work teaches a man not to be wasteful. Even in my misery, curiosity got the better of me. I had to know what she considered garbage. I untied the knot with numb fingers. I expected old clothes or maybe my tools. Instead, my hand touched something hard and rectangular wrapped tightly in heavy plastic. I pulled it out. It was a stack of bills, $100 bills. I dug deeper into the bag, another bundle, and another. My breath caught in my throat. I looked around quickly to make sure no one was watching. This was not trash. This was cash. Serious cash. I did a rough count in the dim light. It looked like nearly $700,000. My hands shook as I found a white envelope at the bottom. My name was scrawled on the front in handwriting I knew better than my own. I tore it open. The paper was slightly damp from the rain. I held it up to the flickering streetlight. Dad, the letter read. If you are reading this, then the act worked. I am so sorry for what I said. Every word was a lie. I leaned closer. The ink was smeared in places where she must have been crying while she wrote it. Darius is in trouble, Dad. Bad trouble. He owes $3 million to dangerous men in Las Vegas. He gambled away investor money and forged documents to hide it. The house is his only way out, but it is not enough. My blood ran cold as I read the next lines. The rain seemed to stop existing. He took out a massive life insurance policy on you last month. He plans to stage an accident tonight. A fall down the steep basement stairs. He thinks you are old and frail, and the police will call it a tragedy. Once you are gone, he would forge your signature to transfer the house and collect the insurance money to pay his debts. I gripped the paper until my knuckles turned white. I had to get you out of the house immediately, Nia wrote. If he suspects I know the truth, we are both dead. I had to make him believe I chose him over you. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. The money is mine, Dad. I earned it through my private design work over the last 5 years. Darius thinks I make $30,000 a year, but I hid the rest just in case. Take it. Go to Luther. Hide. Do not come back until you are ready to bring him down. I love you. I folded the letter. The rage in my chest was no longer a cold ache. It was a hot fire. My daughter had not betrayed me. She had saved my life. And now it was my turn to save hers. The taxi ride to the south side took 40 minutes. I did not run to Seattle or some distant city where old men go to fade away. I went to the only place where loyalty still meant something. The neon sign of Luther's Cuts buzzed against the heavy darkness of 87th Street. It was 2 a.m. The streets were empty except for the biting wind and the ghosts of old hustlers. I pounded on the metal security grate. A moment later, the shutter rolled up with a metallic screech. Luther stood there in his undershirt holding a baseball bat. He was 70 years old, but he still had the arms of a heavyweight boxer. We served in Vietnam together. We survived the jungle by trusting no one but each other. He looked at my soaked clothes. He looked at the black garbage bag in my hand. He saw the rage burning in my eyes. He did not ask a single question. "Get inside," he rumbled. He locked the grate behind me. I walked to his pristine barber chair and dumped the contents of the bag. Bundles of cash tumbled out onto the leather seat. $700,000 in cold, hard currency. Luther whistled low and long. He did not flinch at the sight of the money. He just looked at me. "Darius thinks I am dead or gone," I said. "I need to stay that way until I am ready to bury him." Luther looked me in the eye. He saw the fire that had replaced the grief. He nodded once. "I will put on a pot of strong coffee," he said. "Then we will sharpen the knives." We moved to the basement. It smelled of barbicide and old secrets. This was our war room. Luther was not just a barber. He was the information hub of the neighborhood. He knew everyone from the church deacons to the street corner pharmacists. By sunrise, we had constructed a perfect lie. We used my credit card to buy a one-way bus ticket to Tallahassee, Florida. We made sure the purchase would flag on the joint account notification. As far as Darius knew, I was a defeated old man retreating to the sunshine to die alone. Then came the masterstroke. Darius had installed high-definition cameras in every room of my house to monitor me like a senile invalid. He wanted to watch my decline. He wanted to record my confusion. Luther called a nephew who understood codes and servers. Within an hour, we had bypassed the firewall. The monitor in the basement flickered to life. I saw my own living room in high definition. Darius had weaponized technology against me, but now I held the remote control. The hunter was about to become the hunted. I sat in the heavy silence of the basement with the blue light of the monitor washing over my face. The digital clock on the wall read 3 a.m, but I was wide awake. On the screen, Darius was pacing around my living room like a caged tiger. He held a glass of dark liquor in one hand, and he was staring at Nia with eyes that were too narrow and too cold. He did not trust her, not fully. The way she had thrown me out was too clean and too fast for a man who made his living by lying. He needed to break her spirit to be sure. I watched him walk to the mantel and pull down the small cedar box. My heart slammed against my ribs. That box held the only physical memories left of my late wife, Barbara. It was sacred ground. Darius flipped the switch on the gas fireplace. The flames roared to life with a sudden whoosh sound. He opened the box and pulled out a handful of photographs. There was Barbara holding Nia at her baptism. There was the picture of us at our 25th anniversary. Darius turned to Nia. "If you are really done with the past," Darius said, his voice oozing through the speakers, "then prove it. You do not need these crutches. Get rid of them. Burn them all." I saw Nia freeze. Her hands trembled at her sides. Those photos were her lifeline. They were the history of the woman who raised her and loved her when the world was hard. Darius held them out. "Do it, Nia," he demanded. "Or are you still Daddy's little girl?" Nia stepped forward. She took the photos. I could see the tears streaming down her face on the high-definition feed. She looked at the picture on top. Then she looked at Darius. She had to sell the lie. She had to save my life. She threw the stack into the fire. The flames curled around Barbara's smile. The paper blackened and curled into ash. Nia turned away and covered her mouth to stifle a sob. I gripped the edge of the desk so hard the wood groaned. I felt a tear slide down my own cheek. That was not just paper burning. That was a piece of our soul. I looked at Darius Sterling standing there with his smug grin, and I made a vow to the Almighty. He would pay for every single tear Nia shed tonight. I would take his money. I would take his freedom, and I would leave him with nothing but the ashes of his own greed. Darius was not a man who believed in luck. He believed in control. He suspected my sudden disappearance was too convenient, so he hired Rocco. Rocco was a former police officer who had lost his badge for breaking the jaw of a handcuffed suspect. Now, he worked in the shadows as a private cleaner for men like Darius. He was a shark in a cheap leather jacket, and he had a nose for blood. I had been hiding in the basement for 3 days, but my heart medication ran dry. My chest felt like it was being squeezed by a vice. I had no choice. I pulled a hooded sweatshirt low over my face and slipped out to the small pharmacy on 79th Street. I paid cash. I kept my head down. I thought I was invisible. I was wrong. I turned into the narrow alleyway behind the store to take the shortcut back to the barber shop. A black sedan screeched to a halt at the mouth of the alley, blocking my path completely. The door opened and Rocco stepped out. He was massive. His eyes were dead and flat. He reached into his jacket pocket, and I saw the glint of steel. "Going somewhere, Pops?" he asked. His voice sounded like gravel grinding together. I froze. I was 65 years old. I could not outrun a man half my age. I could not fight a man who broke bones for a living. But I had something Rocco did not have. I had respect. I looked past Rocco toward the cracked basketball court adjacent to the alley. A group of teenagers was playing a rough game. I recognized the tall boy in the red jersey. It was Malik. I had fixed his bicycle chain for free last summer. I had given him advice when his father went to jail. I whistled. 2 short, sharp blasts. It was the neighborhood signal for trouble. Malik looked up. He saw me. He saw the stranger cornering me. He did not hesitate. He shouted to his crew. The boys swarmed toward the alley like a sudden storm. They did not attack Rocco directly. They just created absolute chaos. One threw the basketball hard against Rocco's car hood. Another rode his bike directly across Rocco's path, forcing him to step back. "Hey, watch where you are driving, man!" Malik yelled, getting right in Rocco's face. Rocco flinched. He was distracted. For 3 seconds, he took his eyes off me to shove Malik away. That was all I needed. I ducked behind a rusted dumpster and scrambled through a jagged hole in the chain-link fence. I ran through the backyards, knowing every loose board and every barking dog in the block. By the time Rocco pushed the kids aside, I was gone. I made it back to the barbershop, lungs burning. Rocco would call Darius. He would tell him I was still in Chicago. The element of surprise was fading. The clock was ticking louder now. The basement air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and impending justice. I sat glued to the monitors, watching the high-definition feed of my own living room. Nia was out pretending to shop to maintain her cover as the clueless wife. That left the house empty for Darius and his accomplice. Chantel strutted into the frame. She was wearing a dress that cost more than my first car and holding a glass of white wine like it was a scepter. She was not just the mistress. She was the accountant. She was the one who knew where the financial bodies were buried. "Where is my cut, Darius?" she demanded. Her voice was shrill through the speakers. "We closed the deal on the South Shore project 3 months ago. You said the wire transfer would clear by Tuesday." Darius was lounging on my leather recliner. He waved a hand dismissively. "Patience, baby. The regulators are sniffing around. I have to route it through 3 different shell companies. You will get your money." "I better," Chantel snapped, "because I am the only reason you are not sitting in a federal cell right now." I looked at Luther. He was sharpening a straight razor on a leather strop. The rhythmic swish, swish sound filled the silence between us. "She is greedy," I said, "and greedy people are paranoid." Luther set the razor down. He moved to his laptop with a wicked grin. "Let us give her something to be paranoid about." It took Luther 20 minutes to fabricate a bank statement. It looked authentic right down to the watermark of a notorious offshore bank in the Cayman Islands. It showed a balance of $4 million in an account named Darius Sterling, sole proprietor. We waited until Darius went into the shower. Chantel was sitting on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. I nodded to Luther. He hit send. On the screen, Chantel's phone buzzed. She picked it up. I imagined the text she was reading. "He is moving the money to the Caymans without you, honey. Check the attachment." I watched the color drain from her face. She zoomed in on the fake statement. Her manicured hands started to shake. She looked toward the bathroom door where the water was still running. Then she looked at Darius's open laptop on the dining table. She moved fast. She sat down at the computer and started typing furiously. She was not looking for love letters. She was looking for the money she thought was being stolen from her. But she made a mistake. She thought she was alone. In the corner of the screen on the plush armchair, Nia was curled up under a blanket. She looked fast asleep. But as Chantel typed in the admin password to bypass the security protocols, I saw Nia's hand move slightly. She was holding her phone under the blanket. She was angling the camera lens through a fold in the fabric. Chantel muttered curses as she accessed the hidden ledgers. She was so focused on finding the missing millions that she typed the master encryption key right where Nia could record it. "Got you," I whispered to the screen. Chantel slammed the laptop shut just as the shower turned off. She stood up and downed the rest of her wine in one gulp. The seeds of betrayal had been planted. They were not a team anymore. They were 2 wolves trapped in a cage, and they were about to tear each other apart. The 15th of December arrived with a biting frost that covered Chicago in a sheet of white. But inside the grand ballroom of the Hyatt Regency, the atmosphere was warm and expensive. Darius Sterling had spared no expense for the launch of Sterling Plaza. This was his coronation. He had invited every heavy hitter in the city. I stood in the shadows of the tech booth and watched him work the room. He was shaking hands with Pastor Jenkins from the First Baptist Church. He was laughing with Councilman Davis. He was using the hard-earned reputation of good, honest men to polish his own dirty image. He called it a beacon of hope for the community. I called it what it was, a crime scene. He had used the deed to my house, the house my father bought with 3 shifts a day at the steel mill. He forged my signature to secure a $2 million loan to fund this charade. He was standing on the grave of my family legacy and calling it progress. The arrogance of the man made bile rise in my throat. He truly believed he was untouchable. I checked my phone. Agent Karen Greer from the FBI was positioned near the fire exits with a team of 6 agents. We had spent the last week building an ironclad case. The data Nia recovered from Chantel's laptop was the final nail in the coffin. We had the wire transfer logs to the Cayman Islands. We had the emails discussing the bribe to the zoning commissioner. We had the digital blueprint of the Ponzi scheme he was running on his own investors. The plan was simple. We would not arrest him quietly at his home. We would not give him the dignity of a private surrender. We were going to take him down right here. When he stepped up to the podium to present his vision, we would hijack the massive LED screen behind him. We would play the recording of him admitting to the plan to murder me. We would show the bank statements. We would strip him naked in front of the very people he tried to impress. But plans rarely survive first contact with the enemy. 30 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin, my earpiece crackled. It was Luther. He was stationed in the basement utility room to secure the video feed. His voice was tight and urgent. "Pops, we have a problem." My stomach dropped. "What is it, Luther?" "Darius has a new security chief, a guy named Vinny. He just swept the control room. He found the bypass device we planted on the server." "Did he track it back to us?" I asked, keeping my voice low. "No, but he did something worse. He cut the hard line to the main screen. He severed the fiber optic cable. The video feed is dead, Pops. We cannot play the recording. The screen is going to stay black." I looked out at the stage. Darius was adjusting his silk tie, smiling at the cameras. He had no idea how close he had come to disaster. Now he was safe. Without that video, I was just a crazy old man shouting accusations. The visual proof was our weapon, and it had just been disarmed. Luther spoke again. "We should abort, Pops. We can regroup and hand the evidence to Greer tomorrow." I looked at Darius. I looked at Nia sitting in the front row, her hands clasped tight in her lap, praying for this nightmare to end. "No," I said, "we do not abort. If the screen does not work, then I will be the screen." The spotlight hit center stage, and Darius Sterling stepped into the glow like he owned the very air we breathed. He wore a navy blue suit that I knew cost $5,000 because I saw the receipt on his desk. He looked perfect. He looked successful. He looked like the devil disguised as a saint. 300 people applauded as he waved. These were good people, honest people, and he was playing them like a cheap fiddle. "Welcome, everyone," Darius boomed. His voice was rich and practiced. "Tonight is not just about concrete and steel. It is about family. It is about honoring the past to build the future." I looked at the front row. Nia sat there stiff as a board. Her face was pale under the stage lights. She was fighting the urge to scream. She watched the man who threatened to burn her memories now claim he was the guardian of her heritage. She looked at him with pure loathing, but Darius was too in love with his own reflection to notice. He gestured toward her. "My beautiful wife, Nia," he said. "She is my rock. We do this for our children." The crowd clapped louder. The hypocrisy made my blood boil. "Now let me show you the future of Sterling Plaza," Darius announced. He raised his remote and clicked the button with a flourish. He expected a slick promotional video. I expected my expos. Nothing happened. The massive screen behind him remained a void of black static. Vinny had done his job well. The cable was severed. The video feed was dead. A lesser man would have panicked. Darius just chuckled. He tapped the microphone. "It seems our technology is a bit shy tonight, folks," he joked. The crowd laughed politely. He shrugged his shoulders with that arrogant ease. "No matter. I do not need a screen to tell you the truth. I have the vision right here in my heart." He tapped his chest. He thought he had dodged a bullet. He thought the darkness behind him was safe. He had no idea that the real show was just about to begin. I stood behind the heavy double doors at the back of the ballroom. Luther gave me the signal through the earpiece. It was time. I pushed the doors open with both hands. They swung wide with a heavy thud that echoed even over the polite applause. I was not wearing a $5,000 suit. I was wearing my charcoal Sunday best, which was 10 years old, but pressed sharp enough to cut glass. In my hand, I held a heavy industrial microphone. Luther had bypassed the main soundboard and patched me directly into the emergency public address system. "You talk a good game, Darius," I said. My voice did not just fill the room, it shook the walls. It boomed from every speaker in the ceiling, drowning out his slick patter. "But you forgot one thing. The King House is not built on lies." The silence that followed was absolute. 300 heads turned in unison. Darius froze on stage. The color drained from his face so fast it looked like his soul had left his body. He gripped the podium like it was a life raft in a hurricane. His eyes bulged. "Pops," he stammered. His voice was weak without the amplification. You are supposed to be. You are in Florida." I started walking down the center aisle. I did not rush. I walked with the slow, heavy rhythm of a man who knows exactly who he is. To my left sat Mrs. Higgins, who ran the local bakery. To my right was Deacon Miller. They stared at me in shock. "Florida is for retirement, Darius," I said, taking another step. "I am not retired. I am here to work." I stopped 10 feet from the stage. I looked up at him. I did not need a video screen. My voice was the only evidence this room needed. "I know about the $3 million you owe to the casinos in Las Vegas," I shouted. "I know about the forged signatures on the mortgage documents you filed last month. You stole the deed to my home. You stole the legacy my father broke his back to build." Darius waved his hands frantically. "Security!" he screamed. "Get this senile old man out of here!" But the security guards did not move. They were local boys. They knew me, and I know about the insurance policy. I continued, my voice rising to a roar. "I know you planned to push me down the stairs to pay off your debts with my blood. You wanted to kill me, Darius, but I am still standing." Nia rose from her seat in the front row. She was no longer trembling. She looked at her husband with eyes dry of tears and full of fire. She reached into her clutch and pulled out her phone. She did not need a microphone. She held the device high above her head and pressed play. The silence in the ballroom was so heavy that the audio from the small speaker cut through the air like a knife. "Burn them, Nia," the recorded voice of Darius sneered from the device. "Burn the past. Once the old man is gone, we take the insurance money and we vanish." The gasps from the crowd were audible. Darius slumped against the podium. His house of cards had not just collapsed, it had incinerated. At the back of the room, Chantel tried to make a run for the exit. Her heels clicked frantically on the marble floor. But Mrs. Jenkins, the formidable wife of the pastor, stepped directly in her path. She crossed her arms and glared. "You are not going anywhere, honey," she said. Agent Karen Greer stepped out from the wings of the stage. She was flanked by 4 federal agents in windbreakers. She moved with efficient lethality. "Darius Sterling," she said, her voice projecting clearly. "You are under arrest for wire fraud, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder." The handcuffs snapped shut around the wrists of Darius with a metallic click that signaled the end of his life as he knew it. The cameras flashed blindingly, capturing his disgrace for the morning news. As the agents led him down the stairs, he passed within inches of me. He looked wild and desperate. "You are old," he screamed, spitting the words. "You are a relic. How did you beat me?" I reached up and straightened my collar slowly. I looked him in the eye. "I am old Darius," I said, my voice low and hard, "which means I have lived longer than you think, and I have learned to be much more patient than you will ever be, son. Justice does not always come swiftly, but when it arrives, it strikes like a heavy hammer." Darius Sterling stood before the judge and wept like a frightened child when the gavel finally came down. He received a sentence of 20 years in a federal penitentiary without the possibility of early parole. He traded his $5,000 Italian suits for state-issued orange cotton. Chantel turned state witness to save her own skin. She avoided a prison cell, but her career in this city was obliterated. She would never handle another dollar of someone else's money again. The house on Division Street still belongs to the King family. We refuse to sell a single brick. Nia used every cent of her secret savings, and the court ordered restitution to gut the rot and renovate the structure. But we did not just fix the roof. We gave the building a mission. We transformed the entire first floor into the King Legal Defense Center. It is a fortress for the elderly. We hired sharp young attorneys to review wills and deeds for free. We made sure that no other grandmother or grandfather in this neighborhood would ever be tricked into signing away their legacy by a greedy child or a slick predator. 6 months after the trial, I sat on the front porch in my old rocking chair. The spring breeze carried the scent of blooming lilacs. Nia stepped out through the screen door holding 2 sweating glasses of sweet iced tea. She sat on the railing and looked out at the street we had defended. The fear was gone. The secrets were buried. All that remained was the deep, quiet peace of warriors who had stood their ground. We drank our tea in silence. We had fought for our history. We had fought for our dignity. And against all odds, we had won. Let me tell you something, folks. They say age is just a number, but they're wrong. Age is a library. It's a collection of scars, lessons, and wisdom that money can't buy. That boy Darius, he made one fatal mistake. He confused my silence for weakness and my gray hair for surrender. He didn't know that you don't tear down a foundation that was built on blood and prayer. Family isn't just about whose DNA you carry. It's about who stands by you in the storm. If you have people in your life who treat you like an asset instead of a blessing, cut them loose. Protect your peace, protect your legacy, and never ever let anyone make you feel like you're past your expiration date. You are powerful, you are worthy, and as long as you have breath in your lungs, you have fight in your spirit. Keep your head up.